Hello and welcome to episode 1 of 52 Topics with Frank Fiordolino. Just a quick bit before we get to episode 1. This is an audio only podcast for the time being. If you are watching on YouTube, you will see a wide array of imagery that I will be putting up on the screen for all of you to enjoy. In time, we look to be on other podcast platforms. We do plan on being in front of the screen so you could see our beautiful faces at some point. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this podcast, episode 1, and please leave a comment down below and let us know how you feel. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode 1 of 52 Topics with Frank Fiordolino. I'm your co-host, Brett of NYC Crime Spot. You might know me from the channel NYC Crime Spot, but this is a new podcast coming out. For anybody wondering, what is this podcast going to be about? Essentially, it's going to be about, of course, we're going to be speaking about organized crime. Frank is going to be speaking about his life and things that he knows, things that he has experienced. But we're also going to be speaking about general New York City criminal history, much like I do on my channel, NYC Crime Spot. It's going to be the same kind of formula here. You're going to get a little organized crime. You're going to get a little general New York City crime, which is varying topics in that realm, and I think everybody's really going to enjoy this. So, Frank, what is your outlook on this venture that we're
Oh, yeah.
stepping into?
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this series that we're about to do. 52 topics where we talk about a different topic each week. Necessarily, me and you, both New York people. I came here young. I was 2 years old. You lived here all your life as well, and I'm looking forward to this. This is it's kind of not only does it bring back memories, but it not only it's an array of feelings as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. So let's get into it, Frank. And before we introduce the subject of today's video, I just want to make everybody aware that I spoke to Frank before this, and this is going to be a little tough for Frank to talk about. This is a lot of things that maybe he has never spoken about publicly. So, Frank, September 14th, 1998, the individual who we are going to be discussing today, he would plead guilty to racketeering, 5 homicides, attempted homicides, robbery, assault. And then October 16th of 1998, he would be sentenced to 38 years in prison. In 1994, Queens prosecutor Mark Feldman would label him the next John Gotti. This is somebody you knew on the streets, somebody who you can speak to us at length about. And of course, we're speaking about one Vito Guzzo Jr.
I met Vito back in between 90 and 91. I mean, when he came into my inner circles, started coming around my neighborhood, which is Ridgewood. He was from Middle Village. At the time, some kid brought him around, showing him how the inner works of the Joker poker machines, and he just started coming around. And this was the place where he started coming around. Where I seen him mostly was the Giannini coffee shop, and we'll get to that. But prior to that, I've heard of him. He was kind of like working on his legend, his legendary status that which we in the mob world we hear about him a lot, and he was known to be a really really tough guy, and didn't take shit. You fell on a bad side of him, you're gonna hear about it. Before that, he had a lot of things in his life. He comes from a mob background, his dad, and we'll talk about that. But then when I wanna, before we get into this, and I want this, people probably not might not like this after, because I mean, how can you humanize a guy who, if you don't know him, said was so violent and but it was a certain violence that life has, the one that's crime on crime, and outside of that, he once upon a time, he was my friend. I won't be talking about things that people don't know about. I did not testify against him. He got locked up before I did a couple of years. and we're going to talk about what went on, when it went on, and stuff basically that people probably don't know, but it's over with. We're going to talk about the crimes he's got charged with. Because to be very honest with you, I don't know about anything he's done other than either being around at that time or knowing. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I understand what you're saying. You're going to be here. You're going to speak about, when you say before humanizing. I mean, essentially, that's how you knew him outside a criminal world. People have their own quirks. People have their own personalities.
Oh,
At the end of the day, even the worst people in the world are human beings, and they act a certain way around, people they feel comfortable with. So, and like you said, you're not here to put any shit on anybody.
but at the same time, I'm not here to offend anybody either by saying, because there's victims involved, and I knew him a certain way. I definitely knew him as a person you didn't want to fuck around with. There was times where he was always there for me when we were, either I was in a situation or not, and kind of like that goes a long way sometimes. Even though I flipped and all, but it's kind of like, yeah, yeah, I get where other people are coming from. I don't want to offend them. I don't want to, but to me, there was a good side to him. You understand?
No, listen, I completely understand. I mean, I speak to somebody on my channel, NYC Crime Spot, who was around some of the worst people, some of the worst ever in that life. And, all he can do is speak good about them, which is, interesting to hear. But it's
Hmm.
reality. People have different opinions, and people when you know somebody, you have a different opinion. I mean, there's nothing really you can do about that. I mean,
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And for the most part, every time I did find him to be in a certain situation, he was provoked to do what he had to do. Not making him a superhero, but I mean, the ones I knew anyway, if you liked it, you liked it. If you didn't like it, you didn't like it. And that was another, and he wasn't, they make this comparison to John Gotti. I didn't know John Gotti, but I see like the what I seen between TV and what I heard, totally different people. You know, he was to himself, didn't drink much, Vito. Standoffish. If he didn't make eye contact with you, he'd put his head down. In a minute, he'll turn back his head. You better not be looking at him a second time. You know, he wasn't looking for confrontation, but he definitely was looking. I guess like a lot of us was to be in that world. He was all about that world.
so you're saying Vito was more introverted, I would say, instead of like a Gotti, more affable.
That's a good word. I mean, until he got to know you, and even when he did, it was always like walk on eggshells. He didn't even look Italian too, so he could he could catch people off. He kind of like looked German. He had like that Val Kilmer look. He kind of looked like him in Heat.
A
Uh,
Heat era Val Kilmer. That's funny, man.
yeah, yeah, definitely for sure. He liked to work out, good shape, in very good shape. Played good football player too. When I met him, he obviously knew I had family in that life, and so we hit it off, and we, and from then we became friends. I remember him at my father's funeral. He came to my dad's funeral back in '96, and Dino Calabro was there, which is a cousin of mine. He goes, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Because they knew each other, same family, whatever. And Vito, I said, "That's my cousin." He goes, "Well, how many years are there?" You know what I mean? He was like, "There's a lot of years." I said, "Yeah, there is."
Yeah, that's funny, man.
I go, "There is."
So Frank, as you mentioned before, you alluded to the idea that his family was involved in organized crime, and I would like to speak about his father, Vito Guzzo Sr. This is a
Hmm.
guy who has reported as far back as having a criminal record dating back to the 1950s when he was arrested in regard to a bunch, as many as 30 stick ups. He would go to prison for this for a little bit. He'd be arrested again in the late 50s for being involved in a heist. He would go away for that. In the early 70s, this is an interesting one. he would get a negligent homicide charge in which his wife would also be arrested with him, and he would go away for this. His wife would receive probation of an individual who was apparently killed in the basement of his residence.
Right.
In the 1980s, he would actually make the newspaper with his son in 1984, a then 19-year-old Vito Guzzo Jr.
Mm-hmm.
would make the papers in reference to essentially contempt, where they would not speak out about a loan sharking, gambling ring, and I believe there was a murder plot involved in there. And this would actually turn into a situation where they would actually come to arrest a young 19-year-old Vito Guzzo at his home, and his father, Vito Sr., would have a physical altercation with a police officer, all the while
Right.
telling Vito to escape, get in the car, get out of here, which Vito would do. So this would turn into a whole thing. So this is kind of how he's growing up. I mean, aware that his
Yeah.
dad is
Yeah.
this Colombo guy, this mafia guy, and ultimately his dad would disappear in 1987 on a trip in the company of Vinny Union's Ricciardo.
When his dad disappears, he's like 22 years old, maybe 87. So you gotta remember, he was a very young guy among a lot of older guys. Like when you your family's in the mob or something like that, and they tend to disappear and everything. So does their friends. They tend not to freaking come around anymore. Like they don't know. You know what I mean? I guess a good example would be the Cthulhu, the young Cthulhu. Like how everybody was like, not only, but they want to know his loan shark book and everything. This was different with Vito. Vito, the older guys took onto him very well. They liked him a lot. He was very very well respected at a very very young age, and he took to that. And um, he helped run a couple of nightclubs and businesses. If there was a problem, they'd call him. The older guys would. And at one time, this guy Dennis Gazzardo took him under. And back to back to that. That was the guy who took him in. Really, really liked him a lot. And basically, at one point, apparently, tells him what happened to his dad. But we'll get to that. But now you're talking about a 21. Yes, he what was it? How old was he? In 91, rather. There's an attempt on him. Yes, there is. He's running in the car with a girlfriend of his and or a friend, and gets a car pulling by him, and the guy, he knows the guy who it is, and he shoots at him. And I'll tell you who the guy was, but he shoots at him, and it keeps on going, and he shoots him again and fucks up his shoulder completely. The girl takes the wheel, drives to the ambulance, but the guy who shot him was this Joe Conti, who was Patsy Conti's nephew. Them two had a relationship at one time. They came out of they got into it, and that was it, you know. And apparently, the guy just after his uncle went in jail, he disappeared as well. Not disappeared dead. He went to Italy or something like that. This was the Joe Conti guy, but that was his first attempt, and
And this
he
was
hated
in
it.
this was in the section of Middle Village, Queens. I just want to
That
put
was
that
by
out
Juniper
there.
Valley Park. Yeah, if anybody's
Right, right. And that's where he's from,
familiar with
essentially,
that.
Middle Village.
Yeah, and this guy shot at him. Obviously, he was pissed off. But since the guy was somebody's nephew, and not that he laid off, but he was looking for the right time, I guess, and he didn't. Nothing came out of it. And the guy eventually, when his uncle Patsy Conti, who was a Gambino captain, started losing favor with the other guys and got taken in, he probably thought it was a good time to get out of there, and rightfully so.
So let's say after the shooting, after that first initial shooting, this is in Middle Village, Queens, for those of you who don't know, which is, tucked between Maspeth, Ridgewood. You got like, what do you got? Like Elmhurst, Rego Park, like kind of in between all that, right?
Right, right, and
What
yeah,
did
it's
you
it's
know of him at that time? And you meet him not too long after his first shooting. Did you hear of him? Did you know anything about him? Was there anything floating in the air about this young guy that was this little outlaw in the making, so to speak?
Well, yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. He was kind of like somebody that took things to another level. Now, what level that was, I wouldn't know because I wasn't hanging out with him at that time. But I kind of understood what they meant. If there was a problem in a club, he always came on top. If there was a stabbing, a shooting, but I mean, that was the thing when people weren't really doing that much of that, especially in the neighborhoods. The little nightclubs surrounding Ridgewood, Middle Village, even Glendale eventually. But he definitely had a name for a tough guy. Yeah, it had to be around after that first attempt on him. He starts coming around with this kid, like I was telling you, showing him the ropes. He shows him the coffee shop, and he introduces him to a couple of my friends that I grew up with, and he gravitates towards this faction of the kids I grew up with. And I mean, we all grew up together. We would hang out in the coffee shop, and they became close. And not so much with the guy who brought him around with him about the machine so much, but about these other kids. So there was this kid Fabio, for example, um, who ends up telling on him. He gravitates towards him, and they like each other, and like Fabio comes from an extremely huge organized crime background, so he felt comfortable, I guess, with me as well, or anybody else, not knowing what would happen eventually. And a lot of guys flipped, but there's also a lot of guys that didn't. But they got close, and they got into a little bit more serious stuff. You got to remember, he was 5 years to even 5 years to 7 to 8 years older than the average guys that were hanging out in his coffee shop.
And the coffee shop you're referring to, this is Cafe Giannini.
Yeah, yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
Fabio was Fabio Bartolotta. His family actually owned that building, right? Where the shop was.
As I recall, his mom did, yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
she didn't. It was a business. She rented it. They get together. They do whatever. They're into stuff at the time, robbing machines or getting a little bit too close in a lot of ways. They were feeling each other out, but they got close, and that's where eventually they get into bigger stuff that we hear about. And one of the first is a double homicide that takes place, which is Rusi and Pagnazzi.
So this is January 8th, 1992. This is the homicide of one John Ruisi and Stephen Pagnazzi. And these two guys are, what are they, marijuana dealers, Frank?
I went to school with John. They were regular kids who got a little bit too much over their heads. They were starting to carry weight, but they were also being very showy. And when you live in a and if you when you live in a mob neighborhoods, and you start being a little bit too flashy and showy, and you start irritating people. It's a very very especially if you don't got nobody around you. You understand, nobody to really vouch for you and whatnot. So apparently, they made a deal with these guys. They lured them into a club, and they wanted their goods. So there was a. We're not going to mention people there, but there was other people involved, and we mentioned the kid who told this story, obviously, and that
To
was
be there, right?
Fabi. Uh, Tabita as well.
Yeah.
Anthony, another of that. Um, if you would, what makes up when you hear the Giannini crew, I guess they make up that faction, and they they asked them where the stuff was, and this is pretty hard for you guys out there, and they ended up they end up killing both of these kids in that club. They go to dispose of these kids, and one of them is still alive. So I guess they hesitated, and one of them ended up burning this kid until he died. And the kid who actually did it, he went from disposal to actually a homicide because the guy was still alive. And this was somebody there. I mean, they actually woke him up. Kid was going to work. He just felt bad telling his friends no, and he got himself in a lot of trouble for that. You know, first time deals, people get fucking nervous and get involved sometimes with stuff they regret. So that was the first of five we'll be talking about today.
So the individual that set the fire, do you want? Do you is? Can I say his name, or would you
Um,
rather not?
no, I don't want to say
Okay, no, I'm just fine.
because
That's why I'm asking.
I don't know if he's still involved. I don't know if he's not, and if he's doing really well in life, that's good. So
Okay, all right,
not
yeah, and
it's not
that's kind of the way that
been out for.
just
This kid was a hard worker before he got involved in this whole thing, and we're not. This is about Vito. You know what I mean? So let's go that route.
I no, just want to be clear. Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is the first of as you said, five that he will ultimately go
It's a
down
double. Yeah.
for. And this is a
Hmm.
double. So after this, there's another situation that's going to occur in August of 1992. It's going to occur with an individual who you told me that you actually knew for a while. You went to school with him in your younger years. Can you run down this situation? August of
Yeah,
1992.
Ralphie Schuler. He was somebody I went to grammar school with. He was a year older, or maybe two. I believe it was 1 year, and he was a kid that always was getting himself into trouble. And not only that, not good to talk about the dad, but he was pissing a lot of people off. He was doing a lot of things that at the time was, putting people in bad places. For example, he'd rob joker poker machines with people he knows that are working in these places, and they're not telling them nothing. And then if they did get caught by one of these people, he put them in a bad jam because that's what they do for a living. I was one of them. And he was ruffling a lot of feathers for sure, and he was doing all this stupid shit, fucking people for money. Not fucking me, robbing it, not borrowing, leaving. He would rob people's fireworks. He used to try a lot of people, but he was getting with it as far as wanting to be a gangster. He was starting to get mentored the right way, I guess, if he was, but not enough time to get mentored that way because within a 4 month period, he ends up getting into it with Vito. And the circumstance of the situation was similar to the other two guys. They told him that they were looking to buy some weight. I don't. I think it was marijuana. I'm not sure. But prior to that, the 6 months prior to this going on, to him dying in August, we would hang out in the coffee shop about, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 o'clock before dinner. And what used to be like fucking around used to get serious all the time. You understand? And
Yep.
there was a time where I had gotten into it with Ralph, and Vito was already Ralphie was on Vito's shit list already, and he had said something to me where we went back and forth. I said, go fuck yourself. They got a little serious, but probably like, I'm just fucking around. And then Vito said, well, you know what? How about me and Frankie go out there with you and your friend Joey? He was his friend that he was like a Vince McMahon. We go around the corner. And Ralphie took it as like, I wouldn't do nothing like that. Me and you are friends. He said, I'd rather roll in shit than be your friend. So it was starting to get that. This was going on a lot until the point that one day the kid just disappeared. And what happened was they caught him and they brought him to the kid Fabio's house with the aspirations that there was going to be this drug deal, and that didn't happen. It's kind of the same thing. They found him in his trunk in Long Island. It was a Mercedes.
Frank, at that time, you're saying he was being mentored, Shula, and this is under the
Yeah,
tutelage
there was
of Bobby
Bobby
Glasses,
Glasses.
right?
Yes, who was a
Okay.
family friend as well and a friend. He was really a nice guy. And I
Uh-huh.
kind of felt bad because he really felt sad about this. And he'd ask, he'd say, "Hey, you know anything about Ralphie?" And I'd be like, "No, no, I don't." And he goes, "Okay." And he'd ask about the kid Vito, and I said, "No, no. Why would I know?" I said, "Not at all." He said, "Okay." But that was one of the few times I seen Bobby really being serious. Did I? Yeah, yeah. but not that I knew. I knew after the fact. You understand?
Yeah, no, you weren't like
Before. No,
alerted
no,
to the
no, no,
news.
no,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah,
no. It was
yeah,
like, have you seen so and so? I said no, and then he told me, well, you ain't, and I was like, oh shit, wait a minute, and he was right. And why wouldn't I have taken him seriously?
yeah,
But
yeah.
that was that time, and that
And
was
was
the
it when you
third.
say no? Well, you ain't. Is that something? Is that like the type of language that because I've
No,
heard other
no, no,
stories.
no, no, no. We respected ourselves that way, and he knew I kind of had a fallout with the kid. So
Okay,
by him telling me that, he was telling me you're good, and he used to be exact. We used to call the kid Applehead. Um,
Applehead. Okay.
yeah, the fucker, just not enough. We just fucking used to fuck around. They used to fuck around with me about the shit too. Um,
Well, let me ask you, Frank, because I'm intrigued by like the psychology of like a lot of this shit too. Like
mhm.
with any crime, and it doesn't even outside of organized crime, even like somebody alluding to you that yeah, well, you ain't gonna see him no more. Let's say it's a comment like that. What how does that make you feel though? Like, do you feel a certain type of way? Does it give you like a chill, like Jesus, like, or is it you're just not even in that mentality? You
No,
don't.
no, no, no. Without yes, 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 yes. Because yes, it did. And I remember going to a certain family member of mine and telling him this is what I heard. Um, Brother actually, and he didn't say nothing to me. He said, "Okay." He didn't even answer yes or no. He said, "Okay." And he just. I remember going up the stairs, but that's how much I remember this. This is 1992 August. Um, and so this was one of the first people that I actually knew from childhood that had been murdered. You heard about this stuff all the time, and we but so it was, yeah, of course, of course. But life goes on. That's that life. We're in our 50s now. We think back, we're like, wow, I wish he was dead. Absolutely not. I mean, I wish he would have had kids and everything like that. But am I gonna stay here and say I flipped because he was my best friend like some other people? Like, he wasn't my best friend. If I had to pick between who I was closer, I'd pick Vito.
Before we move on to another incident that Vito was involved in that he would have to pay for later, I want you to go more into him as a character, as you were mentioning earlier. With the humanization, which is like how somebody is different from other people's perceptions. So you made it seem before that he was kind of like an introvert. He didn't really trust you. If he knew you, he knew you. If he didn't, it's don't even fucking. I won't even look at you, right? Can you go more into that personality? Like, what is it like hanging out with somebody like that? Like,
The
let's go to
funny
the
side,
club.
he had a funny side, but not for most. He liked to laugh, he liked to joke, but it had to be him within two, three, four people. Like, yeah, one of his dear friends was Joe O'Kane. And Joe O'Kane seemed like when they were together used to make, because Joe could make anybody laugh. He was that guy. And he would bring the funny side. He liked to laugh at stupid situations. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's guys that like the clean jokes and the ones that like the dirty jokes. Vito's more like the dirty joke guy. But yeah, I mean, he was a funny guy. He came in with me one time. He goes, "You got to do me a favor." I go, "What is it?" He goes, "I got this girl. I got to take her out, but I really don't want to hang out with her all night." So I go, "What the fuck you need me for?" Right? He goes, "Well, I told her I fucked up my arm, so you got to drive the car to our date, and then we got to bring her home." I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "I got the sling in the car." All right, whatever. You know what I mean? So he comes out with a fucking sling, and
Wow,
like,
really
okay,
fucking planning this shit.
yeah, 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 and we're laughing because he goes, "All right, I'll drive to the girl's house." And he had this car. It was grandma's car. It was a white car with tinted windows. We go to the car, and she comes in, and she's like smells bullshit already. And he's sitting in the back like he's gonna show. So does she. And I know this girl. I know this girl since we were younger. And we're driving around. When he's driving around, he's fucking, because I'm not the best driver. I mean, especially in the city. Um, and he hits the fucking car like some car hit us. He taps it,
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, what the fuck was that all about? Yeah, I'm laughing. But at the end of the day, the girl kind of fucking, she was laughing at us and knew something was wrong. We went, we had a slice of pizza, we hung out. I was like fucking holding the candle. We got back in the fucking car and we took her home. But that's shit like that. I mean, who comes up with that? Who goes to
Yeah.
the 9 mile? He goes the whole fucking enchilada there. You know what I mean?
No, that's a funny story, and we'll break this up. We'll get a couple more stories later. But you mentioned Joe O'Kane, interesting individual. Maybe we'll do something on him one day. But the next event we're gonna,
Really, really, really. Rest in peace.
yeah,
Um, rest in peace.
yeah,
He
he
was he
suffered
definitely
a
was
brutal, untimely death in prison, as some many of you might know. But
right. Yeah, it was sad. It was definitely sad.
yeah, this next event in November of 1992 is going to date back to something that occurs in 1987. And mention O'Kane again. He's reputed to be part of this incident. And, we mentioned before about, Vito's dad. He disappears in 1987 after a trip in the company of one Vincent Vinians Ricciardo. And you brought up Dennis Gazzardo before.
Right. Yes, I brought Dennis Gazzard. Dennis Gazzard was like his mentor, somebody he really took into really somebody who even loved Vito. That was the word around, like a son. I mean, you hear that a lot in the mob, but he really did. And he basically told him, "Look, I'm not going to tell you who this is, but when I die, and this is story that's out there, I'll tell you who was responsible for your dad and who went hunting with him that time. But just wait till I die." So dad was terminally. He had cancer at the time. He was getting laid out. He ended up dying. He was getting laid out. His wake was in Middle Village, and their plan goes into effect. I'm pretty sure Joe Kane was on this one, as far as some other kids involved, some guys, and they waited for the union's car to get to that funeral. They knew his car. They knew more or less the route he was going to go, and they trapped him off with a U-Haul truck. They came out and they fired away, and the main target ends up living. He just died not too long ago. To been a union's guy, but two other guys in the car. Um, One ends up living. Two live, and one dies of some Messi. His last
Yeah,
name was.
Anthony Messi is the individual who loses his
He
life.
gets killed.
There's another individual, Schiavo.
Chiavo, yeah, he
Yeah,
was he
Schiavo.
was he was it. So
Yeah.
right after this, Vito goes home apparently again, changes his clothes, and goes back to the funeral home just like he was getting there then, like he didn't know nothing. And you got to remember, he wasn't a made guy at the time, but these guys were, well, unions was made, so he actually put a hit on a made guy. So this is the stuff that like legendary in regards to Vito. Vito had this kind of mob destiny, and he still does. He's still alive and going.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I was thinking about it from another angle too. That hit, that's during like the third Colombo War, right? So, like in law
Um,
enforcement's perspective, they're like, "Huh, these Persico arenas are going at it again."
yes, yes, but
But it's
with the
just this kid
Scopo hitting in
Vito
the
from
last
Middle
one,
Village.
yes, 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 for
Yeah.
sure. And there was a Scopo hit that was eventually the last, so that was in
Right.
between.
Uh huh.
And yeah, that's what they thought. It must have been one of these fucking Colombo hits or whatnot. And
Yeah. Wild. You think he would have thought that himself, doing that shooting? You think he would have thought, yeah, he probably thinks these guys, even though his dad was there. He would,
very calculating, very
yeah,
smart, um, always on the ball. You know, And yeah, no, I mean, I'm pretty sure somebody did not design that for him. Just the ambition to go get dressed after that and go back to the that's who he was, who he is. Hopefully he turns it around, but who knows? Who knows?
yeah.
Um,
And Gazzardo would actually, I think later would be outed as some sort of informant or something like that.
that wasn't. I yes, that was sad, but I don't know about
I
that.
read it. Yeah,
I
it's
remember
something that
him.
was
I did.
reported.
Yeah,
It
He
was
was actually
reported, but yeah, I don't know the extent of his cooperation. I really don't know. So aside from Gazzardo, then you had guys like Fat Patty Catalano, right?
right. Who becomes his next guy? They have this club outside of Metropolitan Avenue, right off of Metropolitan Avenue, and Patty had the club there, and they would go there. That would be his new guy. Um, but his playbook is not done. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that not one book could be written about, but 10. This is a guy, and he has a lot of these stories. They eventually call him the Iron Man because of one of his attempts on the next attempt on his life. We talked about one, and which within itself is incredible. It's remarkable, you know.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. But aside from some of this violence, so let's say it's 1993. At this point, according to what he has been convicted of, what he's doing time for, at this point, he's got 4 homicides under his belt. It's
Right.
1993. He's in his
Mhm.
20s. And this is another thing I would really want to ask you, Frank. So by the time the mid 90s hit, right? You just had, let's say, late 80s, a bunch of commission trials, everyone gets sentenced. Of course, you have Sammy flipping, the Teflon Don goes away, Lacasio, all these guys. You also get a bunch of Lucchese guys start getting sent away for a long time. What is in the mind of you and your friends, 20 guys in their 20s? What is in your mind thinking that this thing is going to go on, a lot longer and we're going to be fucking outlaws? Was there any
Um,
talk like, guys, this is probably going to end fucking soon?
no, no. I thought Sammy was a scumbag. Um, and this thing needs to be where it used to be, and we're gonna help make this happen. When either as a unit or individually. That's what we thought. You know, John Gotti was still fucking someone growing up that most of me, my friends, and that generation looked up to. The mob was different. It was different. That's where we were at. But no, we I know what you mean. Don't you think you're hitting a wall? You're running a 100-yard dash in a 90-yard gym. But no, we didn't think that way.
Okay, yeah. No, I know. And I'm not judging. I'm not judging, by the way. I'm just
Yeah.
posing the question with everything, if it crossed your mind like, wow, this thing might hit a fucking wall real quick. But okay, moving on then. There's gonna be a there's gonna be another incident, but it's gonna happen sometime after these incidents. But I want to go between the time this incident happens. This is an incident that would later happen, a couple of incidents that would later happen in 1996. But there's let's say, a homicide lull there for a little bit, 3 or 4 years, where at least, nothing, he hasn't been convicted of any homicides
Yeah, it's bias. Yeah, yeah.
within that period. But what is a guy like him? And I know you don't want to speak too much about the Giannini crew and go at large with them on this episode, but what is kind of a guy like him? What is his bread and butter at that time? What is the score? How is he putting money in his pocket? What is he doing with the money? How is he presenting himself? Is he flashy? Is he low key?
He's
Going
not
to
he's not flashy, but he shaking down a couple of the drug dealers, working a couple, bouncers. He had bouncers. He's got a little bit of everything, and he was starting to do a little bit better around that time. Where I remember having a conversation with him after the core of the '96 kids got arrested, and they're the ones you hear about with the bank robberies and the ones that Jerry Capisi wrote so much about. And I have a conversation with him. I remember something about he wanted to talk to me about a certain situation. I don't remember. He used to come to my house. And he liked to hang in my basement. We would shoot the shit, and it was like, hey, this is right after they. I don't know, maybe 6 months. He goes, hey, you know anything about that? The bank? I said, no, the banks, no. I said in around 93, 94, when this was going on, I was in California. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I was close to a couple. The actual main guy, I'm really close. So He goes, I know. He goes, because I was broke back then. And he goes, and if they would have asked me, he goes, I would have been there. I would have been involved. And I said, yeah, me too. I go, because we had different factions of friends within that establishment, the Giannini's place. He did, I did, but it seemed like with him, he always gravitated to one or two kids there that were they were doing bigger things, you know, that kind of like shot him in the foot at the end of the day, not physically, but you know what I
So yeah, you were referencing the 1996
mean.
indictment. It was over 20 people who would end up pleading in that case. You were
Yes.
referencing the Giannini guys then, and you're referencing those. So they did get caught. I think it was like four bank robberies, but three of them were from the same bank. I think it was like Windsor Bank or something. Three of them were actually the same bank. They robbed the same bank like three times. This is like some. This is like some of the town shit. Like, what is that, Charleston, Mass, whatever that
Yeah,
fucking
they were
neighborhood
doing a
is.
lot of banks. They were doing banks on their own. They were doing all this. So basically, they had two kids who got picked up prior to those banks. They brought those their banks to them. One was a Russian kid that went to rob furs with his girlfriend, and they went to rob that. He used to be a dishwasher in one of these kids' places. Tough kid, but I guess not so tough. Got caught with his girlfriend, and they kept his girlfriend, and they wanted to deport her, and he was one of the first to roll on the banks because he was in on it somehow, some way. And then there was another kid, John Clemenza, who got picked up robbing another bank on his own on foot, and he ended up breaking down and broke down that first initial '96 indictment. And this is where you get the little bit nothing going on, and I'll explain that too.
Yeah, and I think he was actually involved in the double with
Hmm.
Pagnazzi and Ruisi. I don't recall if he was involved with others, but he is involved in another weird case where something with his girlfriend getting shot. Well, I want to be careful with the way we speak on YouTube, but his
Right.
pregnant girlfriend receiving
Yes.
a bullet to her belly, so to speak.
Right. Well, yeah, we'll talk about that. I mean, and I don't want to get into it now. I don't want to be sidetracked, and we
Right,
are
right,
starting this
right,
show.
right.
But
Yeah,
at the
no,
same time, I don't
just
want to make it a Giannini crew thing. Um,
correct.
and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it the less, it's just. But back to him though. Yes, there was an incident where a young woman. But let's take that away from. I always do this too. I don't like to affiliate the whoever the Giannini indictment with that incident right there, because my friends that my ex friends were not about shooting girls in the belly. That's something that was an individual crime that he did on his own, and we're not. I'm not going to allow anybody to make that a Giannini. It's not a Giannini crew thing. It's an individual thing. That's where I stand with that. I mean, they got enough fucking fish to fry. You don't have to worry about that shit.
Yeah, yeah. No, but it is interesting what you said about the banks, how you and Vito had a conversation after, like, "Hey, did you hear? Did you know about that?" And he was like, "No." You both had no idea. I find that interesting. Um,
No, no, and a lot had to do with when you talk about the Giannini crew. That they had their own guy that pulled the strings in that crew.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So let's go to the year 1996, the same year as the indictment that we were just referencing with the other Giannini guys. There's a couple of events that are going to happen. Vito is actually going to get shot again, this time far more serious than the first time back in 1991. And it's a miracle that he would even survive this one. Do you remember this vividly, Frank?
Of course, of course. He'd like to go to the gym. He was going to the gym in Woodhaven Boulevard, and he had gotten into a beef with some bar owner over putting machines in his place apparently, and that didn't pan out. That was the word on the street, and the guy felt that he was being extorted, and so he decided he wasn't going to take it anymore, and he sat on Vito, and he went there. He had a 9 millimeter, and as Vito's coming out of the gym on Woodhaven Boulevard. Now, this is a street that I believe has, what is it, 3 lanes and then 3 lanes. So there's 6 lanes, three one going one way, three going another. As he comes out of the thing, the guy shoots at him, runs at him, shoots at him, hits him 9 times, makes his way across the street with, I think, shot 9 bullets, and he took his eye out too. And he got to the other street, and he lived. I mean, he wasn't. He went to the high. He had went for recovery, rehabilitation for a long time. I remember seeing him when he came out, and he had lost a lot of weight. I remember that there was stories that the doctor was actually operating on him. This is the first time about his shoulder, and he didn't want certain bullet. He didn't want a certain surgery not to cut that way. You know what I mean?
What, in order to what? And to keep it?
No, he wanted a. What was he worried about? He was worried about something. I forgot. I just read
Oh,
it
okay. I
somewhere.
thought he was like, "Nah, leave the bullet as long as it's not going to do any more damage. Leave it in there or
Oh,
something."
so something
Yeah.
like to that effect. Yeah, I remember reading about it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. It's interesting how
yeah.
different he looks in some of the younger photos to after, like, the later photos. You could definitely tell his eye. There's something off with the way he looks after that shooting.
Well, yeah.
Was that
After
was that
that,
noticeable? Was that very noticeable? Like Vito looks a
it,
little,
it, it was noticeable, but it was a good job too. You know, I mean, yeah, you ain't gonna sit there and stare at him because it's not gonna finish good for you. Um, but you know what I mean. But it's not like Carl Weathers and fucking Happy Gilmore. You know what?
Oh yeah, no, I don't think it. I mean, if I never knew the
But
story, I might not even
if you
know.
see
But
them real
yeah,
quick, no,
yeah,
no, no. But if you look long enough, you'll see it. Yeah.
yeah. But nobody wants to look at him long enough. Is the point,
No,
right?
nobody wants to be that guy. So yeah, so that goes there. I go to visit him. He dropped a lot of weight within that time. So you had the bulk of the kids. They weren't getting in trouble no more. They had their own problems. People flipping, and the kid Anthony comes out of jail. He had done 4 years in jail, so he kind of like escaped a lot of it because he just didn't he wasn't around. He was in on an assault case. He was up in New York, and they hook up. You know where him and like Fabio were no longer getting involved in the bigger things. Anthony was ready, and Anthony was a tough kid too. He was got in trouble, flipped as well, but they started getting together, and they had a common enemy at one point, and that was this kid John Borelli.
I want to get to that. This is an event we're going to talk about. It's going to happen in October of 1996. But I want to get with the name Borelli. If you look at court documents, if you look at news archives, whatever you look at, he's identified as John Borelli. Can you explain to me when people started referring to this person as John Borello? Because I know Gene Borello was saying that's my cousin, but just for anyone out there, I mean,
I guess that's when, but
no, I'm
I
not saying
don't.
it's not his cousin, but just for anyone out there, he's identified as Borelli, like in all like
Yeah, and he always
legal.
was, and he always
Okay,
was, and
okay.
he Borelli. I always thought it was Borelli, but if Gene says it's his cousin, and it's his cousin. You know, why should I believe
Yeah, no, it was just that vowel was bothering me, so I just wanted to put it out there that it's
him?
fucking. Yeah, it might
I
very well
know.
be his cousin. I don't know, whatever. But so yeah, explain this situation. The killing of John Borelli in October of 1996. A pretty young individual in John Borelli too.
Was that October or what? 96.
Correct.
So he must have been out of hot. Wow. So okay.
Yeah, that's another thing because he gets shot. Do you recall what month he gets shot in 96?
I
Must have
think
been
it was the
early.
winter months of like almost 95 to 96.
Okay, all right. So he would have been, well, I mean, even so, the all of the injury and the
Yeah.
trauma to his body, I mean, he must have
Yeah, he
still
was up
been
and about. Not, I wouldn't say quick. It was probably quick for us, um, but it was fast considering somebody got shot 9 times. You know.
right, 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 right. So then fast forward to October of 96, he's obviously back on his bullshit, so to speak. And you get into this and Anthony Tabita is apparently there with Guzzo, and Once again, John Borelli is going
There's,
to lose
there's
his
others
life.
involved, and there's others involved. That's one of those things where they have like 6, 7 people involved,
Right. Well, this
whatever.
is this is the guy who cooperates.
And there's
So-
also another cooperator there too, which we'll discuss eventually.
okay.
That's Durso, Cookie Durso,
Cookie
Mike,
Jericho. Yeah.
and he's there too. And that's how that case comes about because the domino effect started right after this incident. And apparently, it was John Borelli. It was more about he was putting out a that he was gonna either kill Tabita or Vito, and not only that, he was also going out with Vito's ex, a girl that I went to school with too. So what happened there was the kid comes, he drops his girlfriend off in Middle Village. They grab the girl, they push her right out the car, and they shotgun blast this guy. You know what I mean? So that was that, and that was the end of John Borelli. It was a carnage. There was more than one gun involved.
And as far as all of this stuff happening, I mean, you're living your life. It seems just from listening to you. I mean, even listening to you and Vito, not knowing about those big bank robberies, it seems like yeah, there's the Giannini crew, right? You guys are all at the same cafe. You're all mixing and mingling, but
We grew up together.
it almost seems like there is like little maybe groups within a group. Is that fair to say?
It
Like,
absolutely is. I was getting in trouble with my own things at that time in my life. I had my own little clique. Not me, but I was in a clique myself.
and
So
of
I was
course, for
getting.
anyone listening, I mean, yeah, you guys are all affiliated with, Colombo, Gambino, Banana. There is different affiliations going on within what is called the Giannini crew, but that
That
aspect of it.
was created by Jerry Capisi. You know, he had this whole farm system thing going in the '90s. That's what he was doing, and so people were like, well, how many people in the coffee shop? 40, 50. Sometimes it gets the most of parties to come down, hang out. We all had this common friendship. I look, if we were there and something happened to somebody, we all got involved. We all ran. There was many a times that me and the leader of that main group we would get in situations by ourselves.
You bring up Jerry Capisi, and I want to ask you something. And this is going back to something I mentioned when we started this episode here. I talk about, the news reporting about the next John Gotti in 1994. And
Hmm.
in regard to Capisi, are you guys reading that stuff at that time? And are you guys aware of these articles? Is there something in there? Hey, Vito, they just called you the next John Gotti. Is there like things going on? Do you guys pay attention to this shit at all?
I don't think we were because I got into the internet about '99 maybe, and that's when I started looking at different these mob websites and stuff did start coming out. Yeah, but like the closest thing that the Daily News had a Jerry Capisi article. We'd read that sometimes. And in '96 they started profiling. There was articles. One of the guys I grew up with, he alluded at that roundup in '96, and he ended up going into the on the lam, and he was on America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries, and he was top 10 on FBI's Most Wanted. I remember because I was with him that night. We were talking, and he was telling me that he feels that the feds are going to pick him up any day. I don't know where he went from there. Um, when we said he went to get laid that night, that's why he got lucky. But he got out of there, and he ended up giving himself up.
I know who you speak of. That's somebody else that you'd rather not delve
It's not
into.
that I'd rather not. I mean, when time comes, if I talk about him, it's going to be in the same fashion I talk about Vito. It's going to be
Well, that's going to be great. All right, no, it's good to hear. Okay, okay.
let them ask. Let these people look into that. That's
Yeah,
what makes we extend our show.
yeah. And I sometimes forget. Obviously, I mean, I grew up in New York City, Daily News, New York Post. But yeah, when I was a kid, yeah. I mean, if you didn't get the paper that day, there's a good chance you missed it. Right? It was gone forever.
Yeah.
So after that, let's say 1996, right? Vito he's going to get arrested on April 18th of 1996. April 8th of 1997. But between that Borelli incident and between the time he gets taken in April of 97, that's figure 7, 8 months or so. What's going on between that time? Do you recall that period before his incarceration?
No, it was slower. It was slower paced. People were getting picked up, and they were wondering when they're gonna get picked up because a lot of people had dirt. I had dirt. I'm surprised I lasted that long on the street. So it was a slower pace. I think the action was from basically from 90 to 90, no, 91 to about 94. And then after that, everything kind of slowed down for a while.
So he gets taken in April 8th, 1997. And this is a year after that previous Giannini crew indictment, what they call, Giannini crew indictment, right?
Right.
Everyone's waiting around. Oh, I'm probably going to be next. I'm probably going to be next. Of course, as you mentioned before, the news is picking this up. There's this vicious gang of young ruffians, so to speak. They're all associated with these other crime families. There's not one family, but they all have this one thing in common: this cafe, and they're building like this whole reputation for you guys. And but it's kind of coming to the end when Vito was taken in. Do you remember when you first heard what he was being charged with?
Yeah, because the rumor out there was that people were talking from that one 96 indictment, and the cops would come around, the feds would come around and like go around, go, oh, wait till you motherfuckers find out who's talking. You guys are gonna, your jaws are gonna drop. They would be doing a lot of that shit
Wait,
during that.
hold on. So they would come up. Where would this be?
On the street. They
Really? So
reach
they would
out.
just roll up on you
There
like
was
that?
one kid that's a made member now. He was close to that group in general. He got like a 5 year 5 year sentence, and he was one they said that to, and he was like, I wonder who they're talking about. And at the end of the day, they were talking about the Fabio kid.
Fabio Bartolotto. Okay, interesting.
They were putting it out too that they thought he was the one that was talking, because what happens a lot in these places when somebody begins to talk, let's say the people they're talking against, and they go to MDC, and I'll give you an example. Let's say if Puff Daddy, I put it in the, if Puff Daddy told on Jay Z, right, and they bring Jay Z to MDC, they take Puff Daddy out.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
When Vito makes it to MDC, he's like, where are these guys? And that's what started circulating. And 2 years later, they start bringing in like close another 20, 30 guys from all these different cases that they were involved in. The ones that were talking, from Clemenza to Fabio to Tabita, and eventually I got taken in by a lot of their testimonies, a lot of their 302s as well.
So Frank, as I mentioned in the opening of this, October 16th, 1998, Vito's going to get 38 years in prison. When you heard that, what was your
I was sad. I mean,
yeah.
I corresponded with him, of course. I corresponded with him for a short while because he got arrested in '97. I used to send letters back, just bullshit and whatnot. He was in Marion at the time, and guess who was next door to him in the cell?
Oh,
John Gotti.
get the oh wow.
Yeah, so
I
I
should have
mean,
guessed. Yeah, Marion. I should have guessed. Yeah.
yeah. So here you go. You got the next John Gotti, actually next to the next to John
Yeah.
Gotti.
That's
And
bizarre. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what they fucking spoke about.
isn't that ironic?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, and it's still sad. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, and I took a lot of shit. I took a lot of shit from wise guys too out there. They go, and when I used to say, yeah, he's a friend of mine, some friend you got, and what am I gonna say, and it wasn't my family. It was fucking like other guys. I go, yeah, I'm close to him. Yeah, be careful, that kind of shit.
And when you say wise guys, were these older gentlemen or were
Well,
they
yeah, all the made guys.
older guys? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, because I wonder if like those older guys with like the wisdom in their head, whatever, let's say they've been around, 70s, whatever, 80s, whatever it may be. they you think that they were kind of looking at a guy like that, like, all right, this kid should have been around when we were in our prime. I don't know what the fuck a guy like this is even doing. Do you think they were looking at it like looking down on it, like somebody acting a certain way at that time period?
No, you have a whole different type of the wise guys in general. They have all different ways. Like anywhere else, they think different. Like you like my uncle Cheech, for example. He loved Vito, and Vito always he always made him when he used to see him. My uncle was hanging out in this bar in Middle Village, not a bar, a coffee shop, which one of his guys ran, and Vito would come there for coffee sometimes, and he always say, and my uncle, he didn't like really like, he didn't say anything, but he made it known, and he liked him. My uncle was, for the most part, he was a tough guy, but my uncle Cheech, but he was also a money guy. Right after he got smart, he knew that type of gangster, the violent one, ain't gonna bring you longevity in this world.
That's
And he
kind of
liked
rule.
them. But then the people who would say something like side lip, you know, were people who you'd wonder sometimes, do you know what business you're in? But what the fuck are you gonna say when you're a kid? I'm not gonna say anything. But I liked him.
Yeah, and your Uncle Cheech is Frank Navarro, who we are gonna speak about one day. We will speak about him.
Yeah, we will briefly, but yes,
Yes.
that's where it's at. A lot of people felt a certain way because most of us grew up with Ralphie, and they were like, "Well, how the fuck?" But um, I, and I could say this. I think that the shoe was on the other foot. He eventually would have been doing. It was either him or that guy. You know what I mean? Different times, different times.
The reason why I'm bringing that up is like, well, let's just get this out of the way. As it sits now, Vito is 59 years old. He's
Hmm.
currently housed in FCI Danbury with he was trying to get out on compassionate release recently, but his release date is November the 4th of 2028 when he'll be in his 60s at that point. And the reason why I'm bringing up before with him acting a certain way at a certain time, because when people kind of look back to the 90s, because Frank, I mean, you've been around a while, that and especially once you hit like the year 2000 until today, that the mob hits or the mob sanction hits or these guys going out there capping people has decreased very dramatically. So when people look back to like the last kind of violent era of that life in New York City, his name often comes up as like one of those outlaws, one of those individuals. And that's really why I bring up, how older guys might question the antics of somebody like that. Or maybe they don't. But you know where I'm coming from?
He wasn't loud. He wasn't a drug addict. He wasn't an alcoholic. I guess he was a throwback to the old time gangster. When somebody who fucking uh got it done. Yeah, yeah, fucking wasn't loud. So I don't know why many gangsters would be annoyed by him. And he listened. I get it. He killed the main guy, but I don't know. He had the things that made when we talk about that life, and legends are made of. Okay, people that love that life, listen to it and hear him out. He's in the genre. He's your guy. But then you talk about people listening, going, no, my guy's the guy who goes to work every day and worked for 35 years, or the guy who's in the military. So you're gonna have people not seeing it the way people in the genre do.
No, and listen, I mean, like you say, most people like me, yeah. I mean, I'm a normal guy, yeah. So for me, somebody that starts a business legit and makes a lot of money and buys a sick house, like that's awesome to me. But not everybody chooses the occupation. Some choose the occupation of a criminal, and some people are very good at it. I mean, that's pretty obvious. There's a reason why you go into these barber shops and there's like pictures of Gotti and
Right, right,
Tony
right.
Montana, and I mean, go into any barber shop. I don't care if it's fucking an Indian barber shop, a Russian barber shop, a Dominican barber shop.
Of
It's like
course.
John Gotti, Tony Montana, Scarface. It's like all
Tony
of these,
Soprano. Yeah, I mean, in
all
every
this
hood,
gangster
in every hood,
iconography.
you're gonna find pit bulls named Capone and Gotti. So I
Right,
mean,
right. Yeah, certain individuals are good
it's
at
a
things.
marketable adventure for some, and it's a reason because people are into it, beyond the pain and suffering that families go through, and then we're gonna cover that as well in one of the episodes. There's innocent victims. There's a lot of sorrow. You know what I mean? People don't want to hear that. They want to hear about how badass somebody was. And it's not only in it's not only in the organized crime, the Italian organized crime, Italian American rather, but
Right,
you get
right.
it in the Colombians, you get it with the Mexicans, you
Yeah,
get it
yeah,
with the
yeah.
Russians, and so it's not. We didn't start the fire. Billy Joel
Oh,
was
I
there.
know,
So
I
did
know,
Thurman,
I know, I know, and yeah, no, and there is a thing to like, even somebody like me who just researches this and looks into this stuff. There is a thing to me where you start trying to find the human side to these people, and like I have a friend that's writing a book about some really bad people right now, and he'll be
Mhm.
telling me like, sometimes I kind of sympathize with these guys, and I'm like, really, dude, that's pretty bizarre, but it's just like, when you
Yeah,
start looking
yeah.
into things, it's
There's certain cases where I still like find myself being like, well, I think they entrapped the guy. I'm not one of those guys that find out somebody I knew got arrested and jump up and down. I'm like, oh fuck, that sucks. A lot of people in my situation, I seen that often, especially when I was in these fucking places with them. They don't give a fuck. They actually put the blame on the other people for what they done. So that's on them. That's on me. But I hear that too. But there's a lot of other things like I don't want to get into it that much, but there's that one incident where that one kid gets run over by the driver in their neighborhood, and then they made the neighbor disappear. I kind of at times I could relate to that if that was my kid or my nephew or whatever. And, you know what I mean?
of course,
I
and
don't
that's
know if
like.
that I don't know if that's the old me or the new me. I don't know. So they take a lot of shit for that.
No, it makes sense. The difference is it makes sense. But the difference between a civilian and a gangster is the civilian dreams about doing that. The gangster actually does it.
Right.
The civilian whose son gets ran over by the neighbor, they wake up the next day. I want to fucking kill
And I
that
don't want to make
person.
this that episode, but I'm being honest here. I'm telling you,
No, I get it.
and
I
people,
get it.
and I know it's not a popular subject because people are going to say I'm just as much as a scumbag and people who did it. But until you're in those people's shoes and you know the situation, that's how it is. I'm just being as completely honest I can be. But back to Vito though, yeah.
Yeah.
He's in a lot of ways somebody that people are very interested in that way. The people somebody probably and I don't think his book is over yet. I mean, I don't think it's paid. I don't know. I hope he don't get into it when he comes out. I don't know. But who knows if his book is done yet? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and listen, I mean, I'll speak to there was reports some years back. Listen, this is not I'm not breaking news. This is reported in the newspapers, everything. Somehow he's getting made in prison. We don't know anything about that. Apparently, he was made in prison. I don't think there's anything to
I
say
wasn't
that
there.
there's nothing to say that yeah, that's 110 million% true. This is something that's been put out there, reported, told, whoever it may be. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But before we do end this, Frank, I think this was a pretty good conversation. I hope everybody listening is going to enjoy it. And I want to remind everybody, if you are listening, this is a new podcast. This is episode 152 topics with Frank Fiorellino. I'm Brett from over at NYC Crime Spot. So do us a favor, hit the like, leave a comment, subscribe. This is a new venture, guys. I'm starting this. We are starting this from the ground up on a new channel. We're not putting this on NYC Crime Spot. We're going to see how far we can take this. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, comment, and like I said, Frank, I think people are really going to enjoy this. But before we do go, you mentioned his book might not be over. I don't want you to put any bad opinions out there, but
Oh, he may come out and just be a boss or whatever. I don't know.
Oh,
Or
okay.
he might
If
just
you,
go
all
in
right.
right into the sunset. I don't think. I hope nothing bad happens to him. But being a
Right,
boss,
right.
I guess is. But I mean, I don't know. I wish him the best. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
as far as he goes, my conscience is clear. I didn't put him there.
Right, right, because he's gonna get out within a few years regardless, unless he does something really silly in there. From the photos that I see as of late, he looks to be a healthy individual. He looks to be in pretty good shape. But before we go, Frank, I would like if you could offer the audience one more word on Vito, something from you about him. You talk about humanization. If you could tell us one more thing.
Yeah, I mean, he was riding his car one time. I remember this, and there was a cat. And this is one of the times when he even said it. I didn't even have that much money either. There was a cat who had gotten a little bit ran over by another car or some looked hurt, whatever. He brought it to the veterinarian and paid $600 out of his pocket to get this cat better. And he did that, and then he gave it away.
That's interesting. I read that. I mean, I'm listening. I'm not saying that he's like on the
I
level.
know people could say even Hitler was a veterinarian. I get it.
No, no, no. I
Not
wasn't even.
uh,
Yeah, no, I
a
wasn't gonna go that
vegetarian. Did
extreme.
I
I
say
wasn't.
veterinarian? Vegetarian. But people could. But that's one of them. That's one of his human side. He wasn't around going around bars and going around with standing in the corner with a pair of fucking scapadel and fucking and a gold chain going. Hey, what would you got a problem? Cause that was in him. I wish him luck. That I do. But I mean, as we head towards the twilight of our lives, we're getting older. I hope everything pans out for him.
All right, Frank. I think this has been a great conversation. That's
It
a
was
wrap.
pretty hard one for me, but we're getting into this, and if I'm looking forward to this show, it's gonna be fun. It's kind of therapy for me as well.
Episode 1, 52 topics with Frank Fiorellino, Vito Guzzo. Ladies and gentlemen, do us a favor. Once again, hit that like, subscribe, maybe even leave a comment. Even if it's just a thumbs up, it all helps. Let us know what you think about this episode. If you guys have any ideas, the good thing about this, and I think you people listening will be glad to know, is that we already have a couple more episodes done in the chamber. So, we're going to be staying ahead. After this comes out, next week there'll be another one, and I think you guys are going to like what we have in mind here at 52 Topics with Frank Fiorellino. Frank, I'm going to give you the last word, sir.
Yeah, that man, you pretty much said it yourself. And if you guys, we're gonna have a live at the end of the month where we take all these three shows and people can ask us whatever they want. And if you like our show, like subscribe and then there we go. You can see more of us, and if you like it that much, you'll probably be seeing more than once a week. There we go. All right, guys. Thank you.